Hello and welcome to the FCBC, the People Factor Virtual Group. I am your host, Unitha Muhammad, and I welcome you again for another exciting week as we go deeper into the People Factor book by Pastor Van Moody. So let's open up in prayer. Lord, we thank you and praise you for this day. We thank you for another opportunity to come together to learn your word and to hear what you have to say about our relationships. So we pray right now, your kingdom come, your will be done over this group today. We pray that we would glean new insight about the law of selectivity and about sacrifice and knowing that relationships take and have a cost to them, Lord. So we pray that we would learn how to do relationships better and to get rid of those that are not edifying us. We give you thanks and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Again, I welcome you. Hold on just a minute. I forgot to plug in my mic. so uh, Here we go. So hopefully you can hear me now. We thank you and praise you for coming today. I thank you. And like I said, it's another great week for the People Factor groups. And chapter 5, which is the chapter we're going over today, is the law of selectivity. You can't be friends with everyone. Well, isn't that true? We really can't. Um, a radical statement is you can't be friends with everyone. What some people try to be friends with everyone, when reality you should contemplate before deciding who should be in your inner circle. In today's culture, technology friendships are just a click away. However, we need to stop, think, and do not press send at every invitation to be a friend. If you can be selective on what car you will drive, what food you will eat, and what you will let your kids see or hear, you should also be selective when developing relationships. I am not telling you to be judgmental or an elitist, but it is really important to evaluate the people you are going to do life with and ask yourself, are they good for where you are in your life? And as you review 2 Corinthians 6:14, 6, 14, and 7:1, and Luke 4, when reading chapter 5, you will get the opportunity to see biblical examples of the law of selectivity in action. When developing a good relationship, look at your candidate's long-term potential, substance, giving ability, good soil, and integrity. That's that buzzword, integrity, that we've talked about. It seems like every week, right? It's a common thread that is with Pastor Van's book. It's about integrity, and it tells us so much how it's so important in relationships. And a lot of times, it's the thing that is missing. It's very interesting how relationships can be built without the major um, ingredient of integrity. So when we start chapter 5, he starts off talking about we need to view people as options. Then we need to get to know them and to see whether they will be enjoyable and good for us. So we need to realize that we can't just jump into relationships. We talked about this last week. We can't be so quick to just jump into relationships with people, but we must be selective and realize if people are really a good fit, which means, day one you meet, by day two, you shouldn't be like, this is my BFF. You can have things in common with people and have a good time, but you really have to understand when you want a deep, a rich relationship that you have to be selective. Everybody can't come in, to the inner circle or to your inner domain. You can only be hurt being connected to the wrong people. I mean, yes, we can be connected to people who just aren't good for us. And it's on so many levels. And, people who are not good for us doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. They're just not a fit for us. And so we need to understand that it can get us off track, away from our purposes and our plans. Every relationship is vital. It can either promote you, or it can demote you. Amen. I mean, that's what this whole chapter about selectivity is about. Knowing what relationships in your life can promote, can add to, can elevate you, and then which relationships in your life could be demoting you, could be bringing you down, could be, bringing you down in your emotions, bringing you down financially, bringing you down spiritually. Which relationships in your life are doing that. And a lot of times what I've realized is, especially those people of faith, we think that when we're in challenging relationships, that we should just put up with it because we're just being, and he talks about it in the chapter, we're being inclusive, and we're being, we're giving people, we're loving on people. So we just need to accept them. But the relationships, we put up with a lot of relationships that are really just draining us and not helping us to achieve the things that we need to achieve. Because, strong relationships, I believe, is the iron sharpening iron. So, if you want to leave a question, I have to make sure I say that. If you want to leave a question, please type a question and I will be alerted and I will answer it for you while the broadcast is going on. I put something on the chat. So if you see that, it tells everyone who's signing in that we're going over chapters 5 and 6 of the book. Also, if you're on YouTube, you can click the Ask a Question button, and you can ask me a question and I'll get alerted over here on Google Plus, and I will answer the question for you, because we want it to be more interactive. And so please, chime in and, let me know that you are here. Because that's how I can tell. I can't see anybody, so that's how I can tell you're here. Okay, so going back to chapter 5, I just wanted to alert that because I forgot at the beginning to say, if you have your questions, type them in and I will answer them throughout the group today. So, how are your relationships affecting you? So we really need to know how our relationships are affecting us in our lives. Let's go to page 82. If you have your book, The People Factor by Pastor Van Moody, please go to page 82, and we're going to read about this, because he talks about, to begin, we have a few questions that we need to ask ourselves. And it says, you have to think about every relationship you have: your family, your friends, a significant other, your co-workers, someone who mentors you, or someone for whom you serve as a mentor, neighbor, or acquaintance. So it's like, this is like every kind of relationship in our lives, we should be asking these questions. So I highlighted a couple of them. I didn't want to go over every one of them, but I thought it was interesting that it says, what unpleasant things are you tolerating or putting up with in your life right now as a result of the relationships in which you are involved? What unpleasant things are we tolerating? What things are we just like, oh yeah, I don't really like that, but I'm gonna tolerate it, and I'm not talking about personality quirks or things like that. I'm talking about, what behaviors do people have that really don't align with you, and you're tolerating it to be in a relationship with them. And then another question was, what once repulsed you that you no longer resist because you are in a relationship with a certain person? Oh my gosh, I remember this when I was dating. Sometimes we can have a standard, and we can be like, oh, I'm not gonna do, that's just so, oh, I would never do that. And then if you're in a relationship with someone, and then you find yourself like, next thing you know, you're doing it, and you're like, how did I get here? And we got there because we were in a relationship with people who basically, they just weren't jiving with our where we were going and what we were doing, or even our core values. And I think a lot of times how this particular thing happens is we can have people in our lives, because I know me, I was a person who made a lot of excuses for people, and I still do sometimes, is that you have to, we can have people in our lives that we gel with them in one area or one specific thing or one specific arena where we gel, we're like in sync and we're good. And then there's another area where we're like, oh no. And I think a lot of times we put up with it just to have the benefits of the other side, the things that we do gel with. And sometimes the things we gel with, I think in our minds, we come to an assumption that it outweighs the negative, not realizing that those negative core value things or traits that are just like, because it says repulsed. It's not talking about things that like, oh, I don't like to go to the beach and now I'm going to the beach. We're not talking about that. We're talking about things that really repulse you and really go against the grain of who you are and what you believe, your core values, that those type of relationships, and next thing you know, we're doing it, we're taking part in it, or we are accepting of it, and as the first question said, we're tolerating it without any objection, just to have this person in our lives. I think we really have to question that, because that's a, it's a betrayal to self. It's a betrayal to you. And I just think that a lot of times we are in relationships not betraying others, but the biggest betrayal is to ourselves and to who we are and our authentic selves. So the snapshot of your future is taken with the people of your present. Your today dictates your tomorrow. The people who are in your life right now are setting the course for your next week, your next month, next year, and possibly even the rest of your life. Yes. We don't think about, sometimes we think about, oh, we're just hanging out for a minute. We're just having fun. We're just doing this. We're just doing that. We can put people in places where it's like, oh yeah, we're just, that's my clubbing buddy. That's my this, that's my that. And then we don't realize that it really affects our tomorrows. You hear these sayings. I don't know if it was in the book, but we hear a lot of times where we hear the sayings that, your life is like the top 5 people who, the summation of your life is the top 5 people you're with all the time, or the top 5 people that are in your life. And it's kind of like, okay, so what does that look like? What quality of people do I talk to on a constant basis? What quality of the people that I call friend? What are the quality of and the attributes of the people? Are they hustlers or whatever? It's just what is it about them? Do they match up with us? And it really dictates our tomorrows, because when we're with these people, we we start doing what they do and partaking in things with them that will affect our tomorrows and our future. Learning to be selective about the people with whom you walk closely with will accomplish at least 2 valuable objectives for you. So one, it will empower you to surround yourself with the kinds of people you need to be around, people who will help you advance towards your destiny, not derail or distract you. I mean, that's just what I was talking about, having people in your life that's not going to distract you or derail you, because it's like this. So I want you to really understand this I'm trying to be as practical and say it as easily as possible, but it's basically about you can have people in your life that, let's say, before you got in a relationship, let's use a romantic relationship. Before you got in a romantic relationship with someone, you were getting ready to move and go to England and go to Oxford. I'm using big, exaggerations, but you're going to go to Oxford. You're going to go to Oxford University. You plan, you got accepted, and you are going to get your graduate degree, and you are so excited because there's this job waiting afterwards, and you've always wanted to go to Oxford. You always want to go to England, and you get in this relationship, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, we're getting along so well. I think I'll put Oxford off and I won't go to Oxford. I'm going to be with Joe Bob. Well, Joe Bob just distracted you and derailed you from what your plans were. And sometimes, even in the slightest thing, it could be tonight I'm going to study. And then your friend calls you and is like, oh, we got to go out. We're going to go turn up, for the night. And then you're like, but I was going to study. And they're like, come on, let's go. You can study anytime. It's time to get it going on. And then you're like going with them, and you miss that study time. And then, things don't turn out as favorably for you on your test, or you have to study even harder after the fact because you didn't discipline yourselves at that time. And so it distracts you. It takes you away from something you were focused on that was good. And then it puts you in a situation that it may be that situation, because I think sometimes we always try to say something that opposes what we're doing at the moment is wrong or bad. I don't like putting that label on things, but I will say it can be something good, but it's not good for you to do at that moment. Let's put it like that. It can be something good. It can be something enjoyable. If you like getting turned up, then that's you. But it's not where you were heading when your goal is to study so that you can get this degree and that you can move forward into greatness in your life. And so he talks about that. And number 2, it will keep you from wasting your precious commodity, your time, on the wrong people. Time. Oh my gosh. How many times have we felt like a conversation, meeting was totally a waste of time? When we left, we were like, I could have been doing X, Y, and Z than kicking it with this person all this time. So, I think we all have been in some point in our life or in some kind of situation like that, when you're like, I could have been doing something else. As people used to say, I could have been washing my hair. So selectivity, understanding selectivity. So I have my notes here, so I derailed when I got in the book. Okay, selectivity. So being discerning about the people you allow into your inner circle of life, that's selectivity. We have to be discerning. We have to take our relationships in prayer. I remember when I had a lot of toxic relationships in my life. And when I say toxic, they were not good for me, where I was going in that moment, in that time. I was trying to go somewhere else, and those people were taking me to another place that the truth of it is, it wasn't good for me. In the long run, oh my gosh, I just realized it would not be good for me. And I have seen that, where if I would have followed in that same, that same way, I could see where my life could have been, because of where the life of some of those people are right now. It's like we really have to be discerning and selective, because everybody who's fun, everybody who's good, everybody who's nice to us, Pastor Van talks about this in his book. Just because somebody is nice to you doesn't mean you need to be their friend or you feel obligated. So we really have to know that we have to be discerning and selective about the people that enter into your inner circle. You can have associates, you can have acquaintances and things, but a lot of times people go, oh, that's not my friend. That's just my acquaintance. That's just my whatever. But if you're spending a lot of time with them, you may label them one thing, but are they really that by the amount of time you spend with them? So we really have to look at that. And also with selectivity, we're realizing that there are some people who are good candidates for healthy relationships and some who are not. And again, this is all about you, about your personal requirements, your personal place you are in your life and the things that are going on for you. So it's going to be different for everyone. Pastor Van gives you like the criteria to look for and to do, but it's an individual thing, just like your individual relationship with God. And that's why you have to be discerning, which means you have to take it up with prayer so that you would know who would be best for you. And again, what I love about Pastor Van is that he always has these questions and things that we can ask. It's just like really good, because it says, when you're being selective, it doesn't mean you're judging others or believing that you're better than anyone. It means that you can be gracious and respectful to everyone. You can smile, say hello, and express genuine interest in their well-being while keeping the relationship on a surface level instead of going deeper. Using wisdom and being selective means you are careful and deliberate about building relationships because you understand how important relationships in your life today and to your future. It means you are not willing to let the wrong people influence you in negative ways. And he talks about this. I don't know if it's right here or let's see where it is in the book, but maybe it doesn't matter where it is. Well, it is. It's in this chapter, but it's further down. He talks about how he went to go work at this church, and he thought that okay, got offered a job at this church, and it was a well-known church, and he found out later that there was some issues with some of the leadership in the church, and they weren't living lives that were integral. And so he was like, well, I can be me. I'm gonna do me. I'm my own person. I can take this job and it's not going to affect me. What they do, that's them, but it's not going to affect me. And this is like why it's so important about even people that we call associates, but you're spending a lot of time with them, because he said once he took the job, he noticed that all of a sudden he started having temptations he didn't have. He started thinking about stuff he wasn't thinking about. He started struggling in areas that he never thought he would struggle in, because he was around these people all the time. And you remember I talked about that. It's like that people carry a certain aura. They carry a certain spirit around with them. They carry it a certain way. And it's just a field of energy that they take around with them. And a lot of times it's the energy of lust, is an energy of, it's just this energy, and it will rub off on you when you're spending a lot of time. And he said he had to make the hard decision that this great church, and he thought it was going to be so good, he had to quit because it was just too much for him, and it was taking him away from who he was at the core. And that's why it's so important to be selective. And I think we don't think about that. I mean, I'm telling you, we've talked about this since week one. You find yourself saying, why am I angry? Why am I fussy? Why am I thinking about this? Why am I, a perfect example is, I used to do a lot of work with people in lifestyles, all kind of lifestyles, and lifestyles that dealt with a lot of lust and a lot of sexual promiscuity. And I used to minister in that arena. And I remember that one of the teachers, when I was doing my training, they were saying you have to be careful, because when you minister to these people, you have to watch your own lust. You have to make sure you're covered, that all of a sudden you're not lustful, or you're not all of a sudden you have temptations that you wouldn't have because you're ministering to these people. Now, I would have never thought about that before, but I was mindful of that. And I did notice that all of a sudden I was having dreams. I was like, what? And so it's like, but because the instructor had informed us when we were training, it helped me to guard myself in doing this work and knowing that things can rub off and things can become a problem. And then, so selectivity demands loyalty. I mean, well, that's a statement all in itself that says it all. I mean, when we're being selective in our relationships, we have to know that it demands loyalty. It demands loyalty from us, that we have to check ourselves and see if we're being loyal. And that's a number one thing that, I think we have to always keep before God. We have to constantly pray about that, because if loyalty can be in so many different areas. Let me read that because I thought it was very important. There was a part he said that I thought was very, very interesting. Okay, I'll read this part about the loyalty, but he used the scenario of Mr. Jones and Miss Smith, and that part about loyalty. But he even talked about the connection between selectivity and loyalty is clear in marriages. And he talked about when a person chooses a husband or wife, hopefully he or she is careful, prayerful, and diligent to select a quality human being. Once those two people commit to marry, they cannot have serious romantic relationships or even casual dates with others. Their decisions to enter into a long-term binding relationship requires that they be exclusive and loyal to one another. This same principle applies to any other selected relationships. So it's like, we have to know that loyalty is very important, and it's something that we have to constantly pray about and seeing if we're loyal in all areas. Are we just being the type of friend that we want? And I think loyalty is one of the things that is always going to be put to the test. It's going to be put in question in your life, because it's going to be, what are you going to say in certain conversations if someone says something about your friend? Are you going to have your friends back, or are you going to just, because sometimes some people think, well, I didn't say nothing, I just was quiet. Well, someone said once, being quiet sometimes means agreement. People think it's agreement. They think because you're not saying anything, you agree with them. And a lot of times you're not saying anything because you totally don't agree, but that person doesn't think so. So then when they go back and tell it, they're like, yeah, because when I was talking about this, and that about such and such. And then the other person could be like, well, what did they say? They didn't say nothing. They agreed. They agreed with me. And so it's like, no, but, and then things get out of hand. But we have to know that is constantly being put. What will you do in certain situations? How will you be that friend? How will you be there for them? And that, as we learned last week, in the emergency situations, how will we step up and be there and be the person that we're called to be? And it talks about, Pastor Van goes on to talk about it's biblical. And he talks about the scriptures, John 13:34 and 1 John 4:7. And he talked about, but don't get close to people who are headed in the same direction you are going, and who have different values, goals, and ideas, especially spiritual ones. Do not judge them, but do not pal around with them either. And it says the main reason people become unevenly yoked is that they approve of attitudes, behaviors, or words they should not. Wow, words, behaviors, attitudes. And I love the way he says, do not judge them. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where sometimes we think because a person isn't good for us, that we then have to label them bad. And I don't think that's true. They're just not good for us. They're good for somebody else. They're just not good for us. Because guess what? There's somebody else out there who's negative, who got a bad attitude, who's critical, who lies, that they will be perfectly paired with, and they will be equally yoked. But if we're trying to live a very spiritual life, and we're trying to have goals and our values and ideas, they have to match up. When you're saying, I'm linking up with someone for a lifelong relationship, marriage, just a good friend, someone I can depend upon, those things have to add up. Now, remember, it doesn't have to be the same, but they have to be common. They have to be, you can't be with someone that you're spiritual and then they're like, I don't believe in God. I don't believe that there's a God at all. There is no God. It's me. You can't be with those people, because they're going to try to get you off, and it's just too much. You spend most of your time arguing and going through things that really isn't about, isn't what you're supposed to be doing in that moment. So it says, so we know that it's biblical. And, a good thing is it lets us know it's a smart way to protect and preserve the character, integrity, and destiny God has placed in your life. We have to know that, being selective, it protects and preserves our character, integrity, and destiny. Because again, what is that? Guilty by association. If you're with someone and they're doing dirt, and you're like, well, I'm not doing it, they doing it. It doesn't matter. That's still my girl. Okay, but guess what? Everybody knows you're always with her. So don't you think after a while, people are going to think, well, she's messy, so they're best friends. Is she messy too? Oh, they must both be messy, because why would she be with her if she wasn't messy? So I think, it's all about, it just jeopardizes things that you're working hard to achieve when you're not equally yoked. And and that's when, next thing Pastor Van, that's when he talked about learning from experience. And that when he said, from that church experience, he learned that whatever we are around will rub off on us. If we want to stay on the track where God has placed us, we cannot allow ourselves to be around people who influence us away from it. We must make a decision. We have to make that decision to put ourselves first. And I think that's a major thing in relationships, is learning how to put yourself first. And I'm not talking about in a selfish where it's all about me, but I'm talking about putting yourself first, that I'm not going to go against my character. I'm not going to go against my values. I'm not going to go against my standard in order to have you in my life. And a lot of times we do this. And I think women are more guilty of this than men. Men are pretty much like, this is who I am. You can take it, you can leave it, you can bounce, but women are more like, well, he has a good heart, even though I know he robbed that bank last week, but he's such a good guy. It's like, okay, you're going to be locked up as an accessory. It's like, so we just, we really have to know that it's very important for us to be true to ourselves in order to be in healthy relationships. And then he talks about the grown-up way to find a friend. So it says, we cannot decide to like another person simply because he or she likes us. We cannot take a job simply because someone offers it. We cannot enter into a marriage covenant only because someone proposes. No, any relationship in which we involve ourselves must be one that has passed some tests and one we have deliberately chosen. We desperately need to set standards for the people we allow into our lives. This is the perfect definition of what I was talking about, because sometimes it's like, well, I actually know someone that she's going to marry somebody that she doesn't want to marry. She just want to marry him. She's just going to marry him because he asks. And it's kind of like, but you don't really want to be with him. And a lot of times people are like, well, they asked, so I'm going to go on and marry him. Well, this is the only job they call back. I'm going to go on and take it. We really have to. And I love the way he says that we have deliberately chosen. We have to know that we have a part. We can't just sit back and let others control our life and control our destiny and control, well, I'm gonna wait for them to see how they're gonna proceed with the relationship. I'm just gonna sit back and wait. No, we have to take it in our own hands and be responsible for ourselves. And so he talks about how you can make wise selections. And he talks about a good candidate for a relationship is a person with long-term potential. A good candidate for a relationship is a person of substance. And he has these questions that you can ask them. Ask the questions. Again, like I said last week, you're not going to be like, okay, so number one, where are you going in your life? Okay, hold on. Okay, number two. No, you don't sit around and talk to people like that. You really engage in just very fluid conversation, and you ask these questions to get to the bottom line. I'm sorry, that irritated me. Of what people can, where they are. So they have to be a person of substance. You have to be with someone that you can talk to, because communication, and he talks about this. I don't know if it's in this chapter or in our next chapter, chapter 6, but he talks about communication is the relationship. So if you can't talk to a person and you're sitting there and you're talking about politics and they're like, oh, I don't know about that. Or you're talking about current events. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, pretty soon you're going to be like, let me find someone that I can talk to these things about. They have to be someone of substance that has some depth to them, they're going somewhere, they're doing something. And, and it says people can waste a lot of time and end up being hurt because they do not assess others correctly at the outset of the relationship. You assess this at the beginning. That's what I love about Pastor Van in this book. He's talking about get this stuff going in. Don't wait 6 months down the line, right when you're engaged, and then go, oh, yeah, we don't really get along. No, you have to assess these things before you quote unquote are in a relationship. You need to just be real casual and see what kind of person. And it's not like when he says, know this, people who are not going anywhere in life have already arrived. I was like, oh, okay, Pastor Van. It's like people who are not going anywhere have already arrived. Do you get that? That means right when you meet them, that's it. They have already arrived at their peak moment. They're not trying to do anything. They're not trying to grow. They're not trying. So you just know that's where they are. So that's a waste of your time. Look for people who will challenge and encourage you to become more than you are today and who will allow you to do the same for them. That's just it. And number three, a good candidate for a relationship is a person who is a giver. We talked about this. It's about that reciprocity. And, he says he said, giving is not about the gift, it's about the heart. And that's what it's about. Some people try to manipulate, control people with gifts, with giving. And then, so it's the heart behind it is not, it's to control, it's to manipulate. Like, yeah, you need me. I'm paying your rent. I'm paying your, you're going to do what I say. So it's like, no. And it says, he talked about there's two people in the world, givers and takers. And to have healthy relationships, it needs to be two givers. Are you a giver? You have to see if am I a giver or am I a taker? And we have to learn how to be givers. And again, he talks about it's the heart, it's the motives, it's what's behind that. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna give him this so he can do this for me later. I'm gonna do this with her for her, but I know I'm expecting something down the line. No, you give because I'm a giver, and I give because I want to give. I don't give with an expectation of getting back. And some people think they got me, they think they took advantage of me, they think they ran one over for me. But no, because when I give, I pray about giving. And sometimes when I realized that I was dealing with a taker and they were a person that was just trying to run game, it doesn't matter because I gave out of obedience to what I was supposed to do. Maybe the lesson with them is to learn you dealt with a person who had a good heart and was really trying to bless you, and you took from them and you manipulated them. Woe unto you. So it's just, reciprocity. We talked about this before. Is so important. It's like you're giving, I'm giving. It's a back and forth. It's equal. It's not, why am I the one always giving? Why am I the one always doing? Why am I the one always, always, always? That's not a healthy relationship because the one who's always doing will get tired. A good candidate for a relationship is a person who is good soil. This to me is the integrity, is the character, it's the person that is quality. And I loved how he said, no matter how attractive, influential, well educated, or connected a person is, always look beyond those superficial matters and see what kind of heart he or she has. Look for a quality human being and do not enter into a relationship until you are certain that the person is someone of character who can receive and multiply what you have to give. That's it right there. Receive it and multiply it. I'm telling you, you want somebody who can take it and then multiply it in themselves and others, and that's the beauty about being in a relationship with another giver. Because if you're both giving, we never run out. We never run out of love. We never run out of what we need. It's just a give and give, 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 give. So it doesn't feel like a chore because when I give to you, you give to me. When I give to you, you're giving to me in another way. And I'm giving to you in this way. We're nourishing our relationship. So we never feel like neglected or taken advantage of. And that's really what you want. And a lot of times, especially when you look at these reality shows, oh my God, I watch it so I can know what's going on in the lives of young people. But I'm telling you, a lot of people are with people because they're attractive, they're influential, they're connected to someone. And these people are in very unhealthy relationships because they're there for the fame. They're there for the money. They're there for the prestige of saying, I'm with this person. But they are being disrespected and just in crazy situations. And it's like, so they have, again, had that self-betrayal just to say. And some people have made the decision that I will betray myself. I will allow disrespect. I will disrespect myself. I will put down myself and not value myself and not see my worth just to be with someone of influence. And that right there, if you see that you're that person, I say to you right now, just stop. Just stop and pray and ask the Lord to help you. Ask the Lord to help you to heal whatever it is in you that feels that is important, because that is a very self-destructive mode of thinking. And it's not good for you. And it's in the other person, they're just like, it's feeding that ego in them, because it's like, if there's always someone who's going to take advantage that you can take advantage of, then they're going to say, well, okay, bye, because this one over here going to do it, so it don't matter, because I'm always have somebody who's going to want to be with me because I'm influential. So that's feeding that ego to think they can get away with it. But guess what? If everybody got healed, if everyone has some self-respect, if everyone has some boundaries and some requirements, guess what? They wouldn't get away with it, because there would be no one there that they can take advantage of, because everybody's like, oh, what, you're going to do right by me? You're going to respect me? You're going to honor me? Well, then you can't be in a relationship with me. He turned to the right. The next chick, she's saying the same thing. Then it's no way that can happen. But it starts with us. It starts with us looking at ourselves and valuing ourselves. And so it says, number 5, a good candidate for a relationship is a person who places a premium on integrity. That's that going back. And he talks about integrity is the most important thread that goes through this book. Integrity is like, I love this. He said, real friends will confront you and even walk away from you if necessary when you compromise integrity. They know what a lack of integrity on your part will eventually destroy them, and you must know that a lack of integrity on their part will ultimately destroy you. Yeah, yes, it will. When you compromise integrity, when you compromise yourself, you don't win. You lose every time. You may win with trinkets, temporary trinkets, but Lord, you got a house full of trinkets. You got a trinket in your driveway. You got a trinket on your body, but your inside soul is rotten and decayed. It's like, Lord, help us. And it says it. And the next thing he talks about, failure to be selective can be disastrous. You will find yourself in, again, we don't understand, ladies and gentlemen, when we're in these unhealthy relationships, when we're not allowing integrity to run, that's where addictions come in. That's where drinking, that's where smoking, that's where shopping, that's where food addictions. All these things come in, sex addictions, because we're trying to cover the hole in our soul. And we're grabbing out to all these different things to cover the hole in our soul, because the first it started with, we betrayed ourselves by getting in these unhealthy relationships. And it is disastrous, because once addictions come in place, it's our family. And I was looking at Alanis Morissette, and I love, she brought up that she had a love addiction. She was addicted to love. And I thought it was very interesting how she talked about she liked the pursuit of being in a relationship and saying that she had someone. And then she liked the drama, like the fussing, like the conflict. But she was addicted to love. And then once that feeling subsided, then it was like, okay, see ya. Now I gotta get love again. Sometimes we're addicted to those things. But again, that's crying out for a hole in her soul that she's looking for someone else to feel, and thinking that that's what's going to feel it. And she, praise God, recovered from that. And so it's all about when you refuse to be selective, in your relationships, it can cost you your career. It can cost you your legacy. It can cost you your name. And I'm telling you, he brought up the example of the Jerry Sandusky case. Oh my God, wasn't that horrible? He brought that up, and it was so true. He talked about how because the coaches and the people at Penn State, they turned a blind eye when they knew this man was molesting these kids. And he talked about how the head coach was this honored person. They took his statue down. They took the wins down. So think about this man. He was building this legacy. He was building this winning team, was doing all this great stuff. But because he turned a blind eye, remember we talked about this earlier in the chapter, he knew that Jerry Sandusky was doing this stuff with these boys. But because he wanted to protect what he thought was protecting his stuff, instead of, and I love the way Pastor Van brought up a scenario on how he could have handled it. If he just would have handled it correctly, then guess what? He would have still had his legacy. The trophy would still be there. I mean, the statue would still be out there in front of the school. The school would have all their wins. Their record would be intact. All these things just because the people who were in charge did not walk in integrity, because they did not walk in true to themselves, because they could have been disgusted. They could have been like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. Oh my God, he's a creep. But I think it's best that we just cover this up and look on the reputation of the school and but they could have been grossed out, but they denied themselves and their own personal truth for something that really, it ended up in the end, it didn't work. It's just like, wow, we really have to really be mindful of that and know that we have to be integral. We have to know that when we're not, it costs us. So chapter 6, we're going to go into chapter 6. Chapter 6 is about everybody has to give, the law of sacrifice. This chapter was very important because it's like, this in itself is like saying sacrifice means you can't be selfish and you can't be self-focused. You can't be narcissistic and be and sacrifice. And narcissistic is when it's all about me. It's just this overly attention and everything is about you. You know, it's like someone can say something like, you know, I just know a lot of people that it's all about them. So it's just very interesting, because what happens in that narcissistic mentality, or that all about me, it's like you could say something like, you know, I know someone that da 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 da, and they're like, they're talking about me. They're talking about me. You're thinking, I don't even know what's going on. Like, I don't even know what's going on with you. I'm not talking about you. I'm actually talking about somebody else, because I know a lot of people like you. So it's like, but they think it's you, you know, any example you give, they think they're talking about you. Anything. I have people with my posts. I actually had one person who inboxed me and was like, I think you're talking about me with your post. And I was like, actually, no. Actually, I was just sitting around and the spirit gave me that post, and I really wasn't thinking about anybody. I really wasn't talking about you. And to be honest, folks, a lot of times I'm dealing with stuff myself and I just write about it. So it's just really interesting. But, you know, sacrifice is that we have to know it's just very important in relationships. It is, again, it goes on that in the integrity and all of that. So we have to know that, you know, any level of discomfort, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the value of the relationship. It's a whatever it takes attitude and willingness to sacrifice, provide a solid proof that one person truly values another person and the relationship they share. And he talks about, you know, 1 John 3:16. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we are to lay down our lives for our brothers. You know, in this area right here, I'm like, this is an area where I think another area we really struggle with in relationships, loyalty and sacrifice. And I think really people in romantic relationships, this is something that you always have to, you know, another thing you have to keep before God, because, you know, sometimes you can feel like, why I gotta sacrifice? Why I gotta do it? How come they can't do it? I did it last time. You can't keep a score in relationships. I'm gonna tell you, you can't. You can't keep a score, because you have to do it because it's right to do. That's why it's important of the type of people that you're in relationship with. And I'm not saying you're not going to have conflict. I'm not going to say that sometimes someone in your relationship that you're in is not going to give the way you would like for them to give. But it's all about you. It's all about what are you doing, and we have to know that. You know, the number one enemies to sacrifice is comfort and convenience. Yes. You know, comfort and convenience. And he talked about, you know, he talks about how in comfort, you know, people can, you know, start to take advantage of you and stuff because they feel so comfortable with you. They start to take liberties. They start to just be like, well, I could just treat them any old kind of way because I'm so comfortable. But it just really can tear down. And the other one was convenience, because convenience is, well, you know, we don't make an effort to do anything because it's not convenient for us. I mean, this chapter right here really challenged me, because he said relationships have nothing to do with whether they are convenient or not. They require investments of time, energy, resources, and commitment. And those things are not always convenient to give. We must develop habits of continually respecting and valuing others, meeting their needs, and sacrificing for people immediately when their needs arise. I was like, do I immediately? It's like we really have to, you know, sacrifice is just very important. We have to know that it's going to require something. It may not be convenient, it may not be comfortable, but and I love the way he talks about when we sacrifice for people, it shows them that we love them. It shows that they love. And he gave the story about when his wife had, completed her doctorate degree, just got a job at a university. They settled into a new house. And then all of a sudden he was like, I feel called to move to Alabama. And he talked about how his wife didn't complain, didn't say, do you know, I just got this university job. Do you know, she said she didn't do any of that. She just said, okay, I think this is what, pretty much I trust you. I think this is what God has for us. She, quit her job. She did all that stuff and moved with him to Alabama. And to him, he said he was awestruck by that. Like, he was like, man, like this woman didn't complain. She didn't give me a headache. She just went with me. And he said, and it showed him how much she loved him because she made this great sacrifice. How many people, I know so many people that my husband and I give these examples because we do marriage counseling and relationship counseling. And a lot of times the biggest issue in romantic relationships is people don't want to sacrifice. They want everybody to do for them. I want you to do for me. No, what you going to do for me? No, what you going to do for me? And when it requires them to sacrifice, they shut down and they just like, well, no, I'm not going to do it. And then when you say, well, why aren't you going to do it? Well, because I just don't feel, sometimes they don't even have a good example. You're like, okay. Relationships require a sacrifice. This woman, in some cases, if you look at it, she could have been justified to say, well, honey, she could have said it in a nice way. Honey, I just got this job. Are you sure? I don't know if this is really okay for us. But she just supported him. And that, to me, she made a major sacrifice. But I bet you 9 times out of 10 that when she made that sacrifice, it has paid for itself so many times over for her by just sacrificing this for her husband. And I'm telling you, it pays in the end when we sacrifice. And a lot of times we don't realize that a lot of our conflict and a lot of our hurt and a lot of our pain is because we won't go back to what we just talked about. We won't give. We won't give of ourselves. We're holding back. We want everybody to give to us, everybody to change, everybody to do the work. And then we're sitting here like this, like, okay, give me more, give me more. And they're like, okay, so when you going to give to me? When are you going to show me? I did show you. When did you show me? I showed you when I just sat here and talked to you. No, talk is cheap. Action is what pays. Action is what shows people that you really care. So it's just like, and then it says it's going to cost you something. One of the basic truths of any good, healthy, successful relationship is that it costs. It requires an investment from everyone involved. Of a relationship is like a bank account. If you do not put anything into it, you will never get anything out of it. And that's the whole thing about the sacrifice. The way people prove beyond all doubt that they are serious about a relationship is that they are willing to sacrifice for it. Sometimes sacrifice stings. It is not enjoyable, but it is unavoidable. And I'm telling you, lasting marriages, lasting relationships is because these people went through a sacrifice. Somewhere down the line, there was a sacrifice in order to stay in this relationship, and it cost them something. And sometimes people think of all these great, big, major things. Sometimes it's not something major. Sometimes it just costs you your time. Sometimes it costs you a little bit of money. Sometimes it costs you some patience. Sometimes it costs you to be generous, to be forgiving, to be loving, to be gracious. The number one thing I think we can extend to people is grace and mercy, like God extended to us. We are so quick to say, Lord, forgive me of my sins, but we don't want to forgive others when they sin against us and hurt us. We want God to do all these things for us, but we're not able to extend that to others. We have to be willing to forgive. We have to be willing to extend grace and mercy because, there by the grace of God, there go I. None of us are perfect. No one is going to do everything right. There are times when we hurt people and we don't realize it. And we just want them to extend some grace and mercy to us. And so it is, and it's like the plans and purposes of God in your life have immeasurable and infinite value and are worth every investment he asks you to make. If you were able to step into your destiny easily without sacrifice and expense, chances are chances are high that you would esteem it too lightly and readily neglect, misuse, or lose it. I'm telling you, that's it. It's just like when you have to sacrifice when you're going to school. You have to sacrifice when you're doing all these things. Sacrifice in the end, when you go through that journey, when you go through that process, you come out better. You never come out bad, worse to me on the other side of a sacrifice. Now, when people betray you and people, that's on them. That's not you. I'm talking about you and your personal responsibility. When you sacrifice and do it with the right motives, the right intentions, and by the leading of the Holy Spirit, it will pay off for you. Even if you've been hurt, it's still going to pay off for you because you're going to grow. You're going to grow wiser. You're going to learn what not to do next time. But you never lose in being your best and optimal person. And so too much too soon, too freely equals disaster. And that's when he talked about the prodigal son and talked about all these things that talked about the prodigal son. His father just gave him too much too soon and he squandered it. And what I love about the parable, we talked about this in the parables virtual group, is when what I loved about the son came to himself and he realized that in order, I done went out here, squandered all this money, done work for these people, they done hurt, they taken from me, they did me wrong. I got to go back to my father's house. He came to himself and realized, I got to come to my father's house. I have to make a sacrifice. I have to be uncomfortable because he said, I'm going to go to my father's house and I'm going to work for him. And I'm going to ask him for mercy. And I'm going to ask him, because it's almost like I'd rather be in the hands of my father than out here in the hands of my enemy. And a lot of times we don't want to have sacrifice. How many times with family, with friends, your family is taking care of you, LB, and you just like, I ain't doing nothing. It's like, what? I mean, come on. I realize that now as a mother, but when I was younger, I didn't realize, my parents were making major sacrifices for me. And I was just like, so when they asked me to clean my room, I was like, if I feel like, why are you having a big deal about my room? But now that I'm a mother, I realize it's very important. It's like, you think that's the least you could do. That's the least you could do for the sacrifices that I'm doing. But when we're self-focused, when it's all about us, we can't see sacrifices. All we can see is when someone asks us to do something, we look at it as a offense. Like, why do you want me to do? I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not. I don't feel like it. No. So God gives us something he sees as valuable in our lives. And he often asks us to sacrifice for it because that ensures that we will cherish it and handle it wisely. He knows that the more it costs, the more highly we will esteem it. Yes, we will. That degree, that marriage, when we give up so soon in our marriages, I know so many people that have and are divorced and it takes two. I'm not blaming anyone in these situations, but I'm saying that there are some situations that could have been worked out. Every situation can't. I understand that. There's some situations that could have been worked out if they would have went the extra mile. And but it takes a sacrifice. It takes being uncomfortable. And you know what I realized in this microwave world? We want everything immediate. So when we make a sacrifice, we expect immediate returns. And sometimes when you make a sacrifice, you're not going to get immediate returns. You're going to get returns down the line. It may take a year, it may take 6 months, but you make the sacrifice, you make the commitment, you do that thing, and you will see the fruit of it later. It's like when you plant a seed in the ground, it doesn't sprout up in 24 hours. It goes through the season, and then you will see the fruit. And a lot of times we want that microwave instant. And when we don't see the instant, it's like, okay, so what did you do? In our relationship counseling, we'll say, okay, so we give the couples an assignment, and then they do it. And then one partner will come back and say, well, I did it and I didn't see no change. And that's why I'm not going to do it no more. And we're like, well, how many times did you do it? Oh, I did it once. Well, I did it twice, but when they didn't reach I was like, I'm not doing it no more. Okay, that's just once or twice. You got to when you're putting in a new system and a new thing, you got to give people a chance to do it. So I think it's just, sacrifice is not immediate. We have to remember that when we make a sacrifice, we may not see immediate returns. So we have to know that it's not about the result. It's about just being obedient to do what needs to be done at that moment. And then it says the second reality of sacrifice is healthy relationships are worth it. The price you are willing to pay for something reveals its value to you. Sacrifice must take place because a thriving, meaningful relationship requires investment, and investment often involves risk. That's what I was just talking about. I mean, we have to know that we are investing in our lives and our futures with our relationships, with our friendships, with our family, with our loved ones, romantically. We are making an investment and it takes a risk, which means we may get hurt. We may have a loss, but we come out so much better than not trying and not doing at all. We want the healthy relationships because we thrive in healthy relationships. We reach our potential in healthy relationships. We receive our goals in healthy relationships. We are happier. We're at peace. We have love when we have healthy, thriving relationships in our lives. And so, and it says you communicate that it means so much to you that you are willing to give up other things so you can have it. You send the message that the relationship is worth paying for. And it's true. And it's like, no matter what the sacrifice is, the sacrifice means many different things to different people. When people are willing to do it, you can be sure that they value that for which they surrender other things. And it's so true. You know, when we show how much we value people, situations by how we sacrifice for them. And it's nothing more hurtful to be a person that has sacrificed and you deal with a person who does not see your sacrifice and who does not value your sacrifice. And we have to learn that, you know, I'm not a person that throws people away very quickly or just like, oh, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm a person that by the time I get to that, I've given you so many chances. I've done so many things. I've just, you know, and I think that we have to prayerfully know what to do in our relationships, because even when we have this roadmap as this book, we have to put every relationship in prayer before God, because God knows the stages that people in our lives are in. And if you feel in doubt and you don't know and you don't trust what you're hearing or what you think you're hearing from God about certain relationships, that's where your other friendships come in. That's where accountability comes in. Go seek some prayer partners. Go seek one of your other friends and say, you know what? I'm really praying about this relationship I'm in right now. I have a relationship and there's some questionable things. And I don't really know if it's just a person in process or is this an unhealthy relationship? I really am confused and I really want to be right in this relationship. Would you pray with me? Would you just pray with me? And if the Lord puts anything on your heart, just tell me. Can you just, you know, and you know, or even what do you think? This is this, and get their opinion, you know, and see what's going on. I just think the Lone Ranger and us trying to do it on our own, we can't do it. I constantly call my friends with things. If I'm in conflict with somebody else, if I feel something about somebody else, it could be another friend, a family member. I'm like, look, am I tripping? I mean, please tell me, because I value that. I value relationships, and I want to make sure that I am being the type of friend and the type of spouse and the type of loved one that I need to be. And so sometimes you can't see. Remember, we talked about the blind spots. We can't see the blind spots, and we need somebody else to help us point it out. So I really encourage you that in this place of sacrifice, sometimes maybe you need to figure out, am I sacrificing too much? You know, really seek out someone else that you're accountable to and get their take on it and get them to pray with you and fast with you about it. Because I think every relationship needs to be in prayer. There is no cut and dry. There is always, Lord, what are you saying about this? What do I need to do? And you know what he talks about later on? He talks about your relationships start with your let me get it right. It's about your relationship with God. It's the vertical and the horizontal. A lot of times our relationships, we don't know what to do and we're not thriving because we're not putting our relationships to God. Our relationship with God isn't right. So we have to make sure that we have a relationship with God. We really have to nurture that. And if you're in a place where you're growing or you're just stuck and you really don't have a relationship with God, I really suggest that you spark that relationship, that you really grow close to God and rekindle that, because we can't do this in our own strength. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that's how people give up. It's not unnecessary that they're bad or they're weak or they're this. We want to give people labels. I really don't like labels. We try to give people labels, but sometimes people are just tired. They're tired because they're doing relationships in their own strength. How can I be the best friend? How can I be the best spouse? Oh, I'm so tired. I'm trying. We're not submitting and giving this to God and allowing the Holy Spirit to comfort and strengthen us to do what we need to do in our relationships. But we won't have that dynamic if we don't have a relationship with God. We have to have a relationship with God first. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about relationship, personal relationship. God, what are you requiring of me? Not what are you requiring of my sister, my brother, my auntie, my cousin. What are you requiring of me? What are you requiring of me, Lord? Let me surrender to what you have for my life. And so we really have to take that time to get that relationship together so that all our other relationships can flourish. It's very, very important. And it's like, he says it in here. It's about your private walk with God. Your private walk with God will determine every other thing in your life, every relationship, every career move, everything will be with your relationship with God. And I'm telling you, as a person, the before and after Christ is very different. I was stressed. I was doing things in my own strength. I was tired. I was in a lot of toxic stuff. I was in a lot of, I was just being disrespected. I was just in all kind of relationships because I was trying to do it in my own strength, and I was always tired, and I didn't understand why I was tired, and I didn't understand why I was frustrated, and I didn't understand why I was angry, and I didn't understand why I had an attitude, and I didn't understand why. See how my voice? That's how I was all the time. I was just like that. But I'm telling you, when I got my relationship with the Father correct, when I got my relationship with God, and still in process as I am today, but I learned the importance of accountability. I learned the importance of healthy relationships. I learned the importance of trusting God. Everything in my life has changed. Everything in my life has changed. Every relationship, every person, because I'm working on me first. As Pastor Van said, it begins with us. So I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, read chapter 5 and 6 if you haven't. Remember, raising your relational IQ. There's some questions always in the back of each chapter. Answer the questions. Journal. Have your journal, because we're going to be tracking our growth during this group. We're going to be tracking our growth. We're going to see where we are. We're going to really, you can go back and look at this group and say, oh, I can see where I'm seeing it now. So many of even while I'm teaching the group, I'm telling you, there's a part when he talked about the sacrifice, and I was like, and he was talking about how you could say you have friends, but you don't talk to them. And then you talk about, that's my best friend. Okay, guilty. I've been guilty of that. And then he says, and you say, well, it doesn't matter how long we haven't talked. When we talk, we just reconnect, and it's like the same. I'm laughing because that is so me. So I was so convicted, because I was like, he said, the relationship is the communication. It's the time that you put into it. And I was like, whoa, let me reanalyze. Again, it takes me to go back at me. And who am I calling friend? What is the quality I'm putting in the relationship? And what is the quality of time they're putting in it? And let's look at this and let's reevaluate this. So chapter 7 is what you don't know can hurt you. The law against secrets. Lord. And then chapter 8 is the most valuable people aren't always the most visible. The law of true value. Oh my God, I can't wait for that, because I learned that lesson as well. Sometimes we think certain people are supposed to be in our lives. We look at certain people and go, oh, that's who, yeah. No, I'm telling you, some of the people who have blessed me the most are the people that I wouldn't have chose, but God chose them for me. And I'm telling you, the richest, most blessed situations and relationships have come from people that I wouldn't have chose, but God chose. So get ready. We're going deeper in this ride with the people factor. This is Unitha Muhammad. Thank you for joining me this week. As always, I wish you peace and blessings. Have a blessed week. See you next week.